But I hope the water didn't get in the engine there.
All that shit gonna fall if we get a flood. All those people gonna be gone. I'm already gonna tell you.
And Hampton roads in the Outer Banks are no strangers to tidal flooding. We saw some of it today in the usual low-lying areas.
You know, it's kind of heartbreaking to think that we won't get protected, but we can literally look across the river and see a wall that we can't have.
The Southside communities of Norfolk came together and rallied and said, hey, this isn't fair. You left us out.
I don't know why they always look at us so different because we live in low-income housing, because some of us, we have to be here.
Time's up. You know, go find a couch, go find an apartment, move to Philly, whatever. Is just not really fair at all.
Norfolk is second to New Orleans in terms of flood risk, so the Army Corps of Engineers decided to step in. But when they stepped in, they left some neighborhoods out, including where we are now, Berkeley.
Environmental advocate Kim Sutterth calls Berkeley the center of her universe.
Coming out here, having a cup of coffee, I'll say what's up to my neighbors over here, and Miss Lassiter right there, and Miss Patsy that lives right here, and you know, just knowing just about everybody on your block, that's unusual.
Sutterth knows she has a tricky last name, so she tries to tell people to think of sudsy water and the planet Earth. Her neighbors always want to chat, but she wouldn't want it any other way.
I didn't know. I got here and, you know, fell in love with the house, and then I fell in love with the community and the way they love me back. Yeah, I can't imagine living anywhere else.
As much as she champions Berkeley, Sutterth knows flooding is an issue there as much as anywhere else in Norfolk.
At the end of the street is the Pescara Creek, and that floods very often. It's a little river that flows down, and it's kind of low to the ground, and so on those days where I know it's going to rain a lot very quickly, I'll just move it across the street to the shopping center.
The Army Corps of Engineers presented Norfolk with the Coastal Storm Risk Management Project. It is a part of a multi-billion-dollar suite of projects given by the federal government for flood mitigation. However, the CSRM will only protect downtown Norfolk, leaving the South Side more vulnerable to future floods.
When the Army Corps of Engineers did their benefit cost analysis, they said that basically the wall would cost more than the property that it would protect. And that's all of us here on the South Side. So that's Berkeley, Compostela, Compostela Heights, Diggs Town, Oakleaf, all of us in the zip code 23523, at least in Norfolk.
Sutter's love for Berkeley led her to the Norfolk Planning Commission and the Berkeley Historical Society. So you can only imagine how disappointed she was about the Army Corps' exclusion from the study.
I'm not advocating for someone not to get a wall, right? I just think that we deserve the same amount of protection. And when we were talking before, I mentioned that, you know, it's kind of heartbreaking to think that we won't get protected, but we can literally look across the river and see a wall that we can't have. I have a friend at Wetlands Watch, Skip, and he will send me an email and say, hey, it's going to flood at the Pescara today. And then I print out these little cards and I put them on, I'll put them in the door handles and just like, hey, you might want to move your car today.
She's right. You can call Skip Stiles, Norfolk's living flood signal.
I'll send you the notice because I was about to send one out. I send out a flood notice to people.
Please include me.
Stiles and Sutterth met each other through a climate advocacy group, and Stiles believes the exclusion could have been avoided if Norfolk prepared properly. He believes Norfolk was presented with this money in the middle of them costing out their strategy, what would have been in 2016. While the Army Corps takes over with their schedule, cities like Virginia Beach and Hampton had time to complete their financial plan.
What I don't see in Norfolk is a strategy that says, okay, it's going to take this much money and here's how we're going to get there. You know, so people have an idea what's coming rather than, oh, look, here's some federal money. Let's go build a flood wall. And then frankly, look at it and figure out if it's just or not. You know, it's like, wait, what's all this money over here going? You know, let's as a community make a decision about what's best for our community. It's sort of a victim of its own success in that it had to deal with these projects I think at the expense of developing this overall strategy. You don't have to go underwater physically to have problems if you start going underwater fiscally. So see, these cities are all doing this balancing act.
The phrase balancing act is actually quite common, as this seems to be the only thing the city and environmental advocates can agree on.
But it's hard to tell citizens we have to spend money on a storm that we don't know when it's coming or how bad it's going to be, when we also need to improve our roads and our schools and public safety. So it's always a bit of a balancing act.
We're here at Freemason Harbor, where the coastal storm risk management will partly take place. It'll be down Freemason Harbor into the Elizabeth River, and residents will experience less flooding.
Councilwoman Andrea McClellan has been on the city council since 2016. Despite skipping over the south side, Councilwoman McClellan says they tried their best given the circumstances.
But that Army Corps project is not specifically designed for that. Would we like to design it for that? Sure. Does the Army Corps parameters around it that limit us? Yes, that's also the case as well. When the federal government says, here's $400 million, you don't generally turn it away.
McClellan was on the city council when the study was done, but the Army Corps still had to wait for an appropriation.
Typically, an appropriation from Congress happens after a major catastrophe. So Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Katrina, and that's when the federal government comes in and spends money. Our disaster was COVID.
This is when the multi-billion-dollar suite, $2.6 billion to be exact, came with a commitment to finish all 5 phases of CSRM. However, there's a catch. It could take decades, and the federal government is only covering 65% of the funding, leaving Norfolk officials to cover the 35%.
And then we're trying to get the state to be a 50-50 partner with us. So that will be hundreds of millions of dollars for Norfolk taxpayers in the future. But what it is doing, it's preventing and mitigating future storm risk.
That's not the only percentage the city is worried about. Engineers say CSRM will only cover 85% of Norfolk. That leaves 15%, the south side.
The Southside communities of Norfolk came together and rallied and said, hey, this isn't fair. You left us out, and taking that into effect into consideration as well as they score these projects. I'll tell you, the problem, though, is exacerbated because of the redlining that took place decades ago when cities like Norfolk would not put the infrastructure in our poor, underserved minority communities.
Redlining. It was a practice by banks and insurers to exclude minority homeowners from certain areas because of their race or ethnicity in the 1920s and 1930s. Now, this practice was banned with the Fair Housing Act of 1968, but the effects remain in deep segregation, economic equality, and lack of accessibility.
And because of that, you couldn't get a loan to replace your roof. You couldn't refinance your home so you can put your kid through college. So, of course, our homes begin to deteriorate over decades and generations. So we're only just now trying to play catch up with our property values. So the idea that one injustice is now creating another injustice, and this is absolutely environmental injustice.
According to scientists, each flood that submerges Norfolk affects the south side the most.
And so now you don't have the stormwater to handle these massive rain events. And so the flooding is even worse in those communities.
The Army Corps of Engineers in the Norfolk district were completely unaware of how their cost-benefit analysis was rooted in redlining, and they learned this a little too late.
Can you speak a little bit about that property value cost-benefit analysis, specifically redlining, and how you guys are addressing that history and also moving forward with climate change at the same time?
Now, when we looked at the initial feasibility study, we did not have that focused direction. I will say this has been absolutely an education for me. We were aware of socially vulnerable communities in the city of Norfolk, but it was the citizens bringing it to our attention of the history. Even in the feasibility, we did identify some of that history. Conversations with the community has started to improve my awareness of the historical things that have happened, and certainly how that may have made them feel.
We are at a low-income housing community where residents experience, according to research, a dangerous amount of flooding. The only thing keeping these houses afloat are these porches, which show you just how high the water can really get.
And then when it floods, it takes days for it to go down. So, and then when people have to catch the bus, they have to switch their routes. They can't even come this way. I have a teenager, so when she just started high school, so when it does flood, we have to reroute. She wouldn't be able to come this way because she goes to Booker T.
Kenya Gaden is a mother who says she's had enough of worrying about how kids even younger than her daughter get to school. She thinks there's only one way Norfolk can fix this relationship with the neighborhoods.
Come out here and assess it. When the rainstorms and stuff come, they need to really come out here and see it. They really need to come out here and stand and look at this water because we deserve a fair chance as well. I don't know why they always look at us so different because we live in low-income housing, because some of us, we have to be here, you know what I'm saying?
If the Army Corps had considered a law that the federal government already had in place, this exclusion may have not happened. That law is Environmental Justice 40. It was supposed to prevent the abandonment of minority communities in environmental justice initiatives. So what happened? The Biden administration established J40 in 2021. The policy states that 40% of environmental federal investments must go to disadvantaged communities.
The benefit cost analysis said, well, it's not worth protecting because the wall would cost more than the property. EJ40 should be eliminating that thinking from that decision-making process.
Sudderth actually says she has not seen EJ40 applied to anywhere in Norfolk.
I don't think so, not just yet. This is an opportunity for the Corps to really do what's right and let Norfolk be a shining example of future projects.
Environmental advocates like Sudderth have been working with the USACE since last March to get funding for a new study, but was not included in the most recent work plan. The way they found out, she says, was also a problem.
There was an article in the paper by WHRO, Catherine Hefner, and she wrote the article saying that, and it wasn't like an inflammatory, like, gotcha moment. It was more like, hey, you didn't get funding. And I got the copy of the article and I said, wait, why am I reading this the day after it was printed? I was out of town and I'm like, I didn't get a call. I didn't get an email. I didn't get a text message.
Outreach has been a problem for Norfolk in not only the recent USACE studies, but the Tidewater Gardens Transformation Project. Michelle Cook, an environmental champion for Tidewater Gardens, passed away during the pandemic in May of 2020, fighting for inclusion. Before the city implemented the St. Paul's Transformation Project, she says her community was left in the dark and concerned about what was next. Cook disproved the city moving forward with the project without properly seeing what her community wanted.
She was on her deathbed looking for a job because she knew that she needed to find another place to live. So losing her was a blow. Yeah, thank you for letting me share that. Yeah, I'm just going to clean this up.
Yeah. A lot of the residents I knew there, the same sort of story. It's like you get hit by a health emergency and it's like I can either pay for the drugs or pay for the rent. So I've got to go into assisted housing because I need the drugs, I need the medical care, whatever. And as Kim said, once there, they found this oh, you got this time free. I need somebody. It really was a community and not just a zip code.
That's right.
It really could have, should have been sitting down one unit at a time and going, okay, what's your plan? Let's work this out. As Kim said, just sort of going, okay, time's up, go find a couch, go find an apartment, move to Philly, whatever. Is just not really fair at all.
They have to do it because the money is there. So they have to build it. So I guess everybody just plays the waiting game?
Yes. There's no other word for it. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, we're not expecting work plan funding till probably next year, probably early summer, late spring. That's an estimation. Certainly we continue to socialize with our vertical team about the importance of the study, and we have received support. But ultimately, we do compete nationwide for available funding.
Despite the growing number of unfortunate stories due to exclusion, these activists still have hope and won't stop demanding inclusion. Sutter says she wants to bring her porch culture, redlining, property values, and equitable climate resilience plans to the table of Congress. She's just waiting for the invite.
My son was killed too, all in the shot in the neck. I know. You just laugh about me.
No, baby, it's about us.
If the South Side is included, Sutter is right when she says Norfolk will be the example for cities around the world during the climax of climate change.
And my hope is that other communities won't have to fight as hard as we have. I know that New York City, Miami, Charleston, there's other cities that are just now starting to go through this process. And my understanding is there are a lot of folks who are watching and waiting to see how things shake out here in Norfolk. It'll be a reflection of what ultimately happens in their communities.
And as Norfolk continues sinking underwater, time keeps on ticking.
Pray for me.
I'll see what I can do, sweetie. Okay, you hang in there. You hang in there too. God got us though. Yeah, you do. All the time. I love you.
Reporting from Norfolk, I'm Morgan Norris.